The ship's descent was nothing short of chaotic. Captain Jace Walker gripped the controls, sweat slicking his palms as the metal craft groaned and shuddered in the atmosphere. Sparks flew from the console, and warning lights blinked erratically. The craft veered off course, uncontrollable, spiraling down toward the alien planet below. He gritted his teeth, trying to steady the ship, but his efforts were in vain. Come on, he muttered through clenched teeth, the flames licking the hull as it tore through the upper atmosphere. His ship was old, and this planet's gravity was heavier than Earth's. As the ship hit the thick air, the force of impact sent a deafening crash through the cabin. And then dash blackness. When Jace regained consciousness, the world around him was nothing like what he had known. He groaned, lifting his hand to his forehead, and a searing pain shot through his skull. Blinking through the haze, he took in his surroundings. The wreckage of his ship lay scattered across a rocky terrain, jagged cliffs rising in the distance, and a thick purple-tinged mist hanging in the air. The stars above were different, too. He could barely recognize any constellations, though the two moons casting a dull glow made the scenery even more surreal. There was a strange, quiet hum of machinery, no faint echo of civilization. Just the soft rustling of wind across the alien landscape. He pushed himself upright, wincing as the weight of his body protested. The ship was damaged beyond repair, and he was alone, his crew lost to the crash. His radio had been destroyed, and there was no sign of help. Just endless barren land in all directions. That's when he saw her in the distance. Silhouetted against the light of the twin moons stood a figure. At first, Jace thought his mind was playing tricks on him. But then the figure took a step forward, and he realized it was real. She was tall, much taller than any human woman. Standing almost like a statue against the backdrop of the mist, her skin shimmered in the moonlight. A deep violet hue that seemed to pulse with a strange, otherworldly energy. Her hair was silver, flowing like liquid mercury down her back, catching the glow of the moons with every movement. The ornate armor she wore looked alien, not of any civilization Jace had ever seen. It wasn't made of metal, but something more fluid, as though it could change shape at will. She stepped closer, her every movement slow and deliberate. Her eyes glowed faintly, an electric blue that flickered as if they were stars themselves. There was a strange aura about her, a presence that made the air feel thicker, heavier. The hairs on Jace's neck stood on end as he felt the weight of her gaze. "Who are you?" Jace managed to choke out, his voice hoarse from the crash. The figure didn't speak at first. She simply studied him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Jace was too stunned to move, trapped under her gaze. He couldn't help but feel like an insect being examined by a predator. Finally, the alien woman spoke, her voice like the smoothest silk, yet carrying the power of a command that sent a shiver through Jace's bones. "I am Princess Erin of the Solarian Empire, and you, human, have trespassed on my world." Jace blinked, his mind racing. Princess? This wasn't some random alien. This was royalty. He quickly stood straighter, trying to appear more composed, but his heart was still racing. "I didn't mean to," he said, his voice less confident than he wanted it to be. "I crash-landed here. My ship's wrecked, and I don't have a way to leave. Just need some help." Her eyes glinted with something that was either amusement or something far colder. She tilted her head slightly, considering him for a long moment. The air between them felt charged now, thick with something he couldn't name. He tried to swallow the lump in his throat. "The Solarian Empire does not extend mercy to invaders." "Human," she replied, her voice hardening. "Your arrival here is an act of war, whether you realize it or not." Jace felt a pang of panic gnaw at his gut. He'd heard rumors about the Solarian Empire, powerful, ruthless conquerors who had swept through galaxies, leaving nothing but ashes in their wake. And now, he had just crashed on their planet, and this alien princess was looking at him like he was nothing more than a bug to be squashed. "I didn't mean," Jace started. But she raised her hand, silencing him in an instant. "I do not care for your excuses," she said, and there was an unmistakable chill in her tone. "You will remain where you are. Do not move." Jace froze, confused and instinctively stepping back as her eyes glowed even brighter. Then, before he could react, she spoke again, her voice almost playful now. "Marry me, then." Jace blinked, taken aback by her sudden words. Oh, was this some kind of strange alien joke? He hesitated, then let out a nervous laugh, thinking he might have misheard her. "Marry you? Well, I can't exactly say no. But I'm gonna have to decline. I just crashed here, after all. Don't think I'm ready for something that ... serious." The princess smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile. It was too knowing, too cryptic. And when she whispered, "I wish," Jace's heart skipped a beat. In the blink of an eye, his body froze. He couldn't move, couldn't speak. It wasn't like anything he had ever experienced before. It was as though the very air around him had turned to ice, and his limbs had locked in place. His mind screaming for control he no longer had. She stepped closer, and the cold sensation deepened, the power radiating from her making his skin prickle. "What is this?" Jace tried to yell, but no sound came. His throat was tight, his body betraying him. "You will stay where you are." She whispered again, her voice soft but laced with an undeniable power. "Until you understand the gravity of your actions." Jace's mind raced. Was this some kind of alien power? Why had she frozen him? What was her true purpose here? He could only stare at her, completely helpless, as she leaned in just inches from his face. "What have I gotten myself into?" he thought, realizing that the moment he had joked was not something he could ever walk away from. His fate was sealed. Jace's mind screamed for release, but his body remained immobile, trapped in a frozen prison. It wasn't just his muscles that were frozen. His very thoughts felt trapped in a vice, unable to move beyond the haze of confusion. The cold radiating from Princess Erin had seeped into his bones, making it feel as if the very air around him was working against his survival. He could hear her breathing softly, her voice almost too calm, yet carrying the weight of something far more dangerous than the calmness of her words suggested. He was completely powerless. Nothing worked. His attempts to speak had failed, his throat too tight to form words. He could feel the beads of sweat collecting on his forehead, even as the cold from her power enveloped him completely. She took a few steps back, her eyes still locked onto him with that unsettling glow. "You're lucky I didn't kill you." "Human," she said, her tone light, almost amused. "Such insolence is rare among your kind." Jace tried to move again, but his body wouldn't obey him. It was as though an invisible force had tied him to the ground. Every muscle, every nerve screamed for movement, but his body was frozen in place. The longer he remained like this, the more panic swelled in his chest. What had she done to him? How long would it last? Princess Erin seemed to sense his growing anxiety. She tilted her head slightly, studying him with a cool detachment. "You should be grateful, human. I could have erased your existence from this world in an instant," she murmured, her voice almost like a lullaby. "But I won't, at least, not yet." Jace's mind was racing, struggling to piece together the fragments of his understanding. He was trapped on an alien world, facing the most powerful being he'd ever encountered, and the only thing standing between him and death was her will. How had he gotten himself into this? One simple joke. And now his life was in the hands of someone far beyond his comprehension. The alien princess took another step closer, still studying him with that unnerving calmness. There was no sign of anger in her gaze, but there was something else, something that spoke of power, control, and centuries of dominance. She was not like any enemy Jace had ever faced. He'd fought wars, survived battles, and faced death countless times, but this felt different. "You may wonder why I haven't killed you," Princess Erin continued, as though reading his thoughts. "The answer is simple. You are interesting to me. Your species, your arrogance, your strength, there's something about you humans that I cannot ignore." Her eyes glinted, and Jace could feel her power pressing against him, as if she were testing him. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into, do you?" she asked, her tone light but cutting. "This planet, this empire is far more than you could ever imagine. And you, a lone human soldier, have just become part of something far bigger than yourself." Jace could only stare at her, helpless, his mind swirling with questions. Why was she telling him this? What was the game she was playing? He had no answers, just an overwhelming sense of helplessness. The princess seemed to sense his thoughts again, and with a flick of her wrist, the icy grip on him loosened just enough for him to regain the ability to breathe and blink. His body was still stiff, his limbs unresponsive, but at least now he could think without feeling, as if he were drowning in ice. "You will not move," she said softly. "Not yet. I want you to listen to me, human." Jace's heart pounded in his chest, though his body remained immobile. He wasn't sure if it was fear or something else, but her words had a strange weight to them. A part of him, an instinctual part, knew that defying her might be his last mistake. "The Solarian Empire is not a force to be trifled with," she continued, her eyes narrowing slightly. "We have conquered worlds, destroyed civilizations, and wiped out species without so much as a second thought. But you humans, your potential is different. I see something in you." Jace's mind tried to process her words, but it felt like an avalanche of information crashing down on him. What did she mean by potential? Why was he, of all people, so important to her? He had no answers, only the growing realization that his fate now rested in the hands of a being whose power he could barely fathom. "You're still confused, aren't you?" Princess Erin mused, her lips curling into a faint smile. "That's okay, you'll understand soon enough." A sudden shift in the air sent a shiver through Jace's stiff form. It was as if the princess's presence alone could alter the very atmosphere around them. He felt her power, like an invisible force wrapping itself around him, and though he couldn't move, he felt an undeniable pressure building within him, a growing sense of urgency that he couldn't explain. "I could kill you now," she said, her voice cold and final. "But I'm not going to. Not yet." The princess's eyes never left him as she took another step back, her posture now more regal than before, as if she were preparing to make a decision that would change the course of both their lives. "And when you finally can move again, human," she said softly, almost to herself, "you will have to make a choice. It will be a choice you cannot undo. And that is something no one, not even I, can change." Jace's mind raced, but his body remained frozen, unable to respond to the gravity of her words. The tension between them hung thick in the air, a silent challenge he had no choice but to face. Whatever this alien princess wanted, it was clear that he was no longer just a crashed survivor. He was part of something much, much larger. The silence that followed Princess Erin's words felt suffocating. Jace remained frozen in place, unable to move, trapped in the gaze of a being whose power far surpassed his own. Every second that ticked by felt like an eternity. He couldn't understand what was happening. Why hadn't she killed him? Why was he still alive? There had to be a reason, but the more he thought about it, the less sense it made. Princess Erin stood before him, her posture regal, but her eyes, those piercing. Otherworldly eyes were full of something that Jace couldn't quite place. There was no fear in her gaze, only something ... deeper. Something older. It was as if she was waiting for him to realize something he hadn't yet understood. And every time he tried to make sense of it, it only grew more confusing. "You think you understand power, human?" Her voice broke the silence, sharp as ice, yet calm as ever. "You think your ships, your weapons, your armies give you control over the galaxy?" Jace wanted to speak, to argue that he had faced enemies far stronger than he looked, that he'd survived situations where most would have perished, but he couldn't. He couldn't even open his mouth, let alone defend himself. Her power kept him locked in place, silent and helpless. Her eyes flickered with a slight hint of amusement. "You're like the rest of your kind. You think that brute force and technology are the answers to everything. But I'm not interested in your weapons. I'm not interested in your human strength," she continued, taking a slow step closer. Her presence radiating an almost palpable energy that made the air around them feel thick and heavy. She lifted her hand, and with a mere gesture, the temperature in the air plummeted further. Jace could feel the chill creeping into his very bones, sinking deeper than before. But this time, it wasn't just physical. It was as if the princess was reaching into his soul itself. He gasped for breath, but his body still refused to move. His heartbeat quickened, the panic starting to bubble up inside him. But there was nothing he could do. "I could freeze you into nothingness," Princess Erin whispered, her lips brushing against his ear. Just like this. Jace's chest tightened. She wasn't bluffing. He could feel it, the raw power flowing from her, coiling like a serpent around him, suffocating him, threatening to crush him in its grip. And then, just as quickly, she released the pressure. The air warmed, just enough for Jace to breathe again, but he remained frozen in place. His entire body felt like it was on fire, a deep burn searing beneath his skin from the energy she had. Forced into him, Princess Erin took another step back, her eyes flashing with some unreadable emotion. For the first time since meeting her, Jace saw something beyond the cold indifference, the flicker of something like curiosity. But it was fleeting. She composed herself and smiled, a soft, almost pitying smile, as if she had just toyed with him, testing his limits. "You don't realize what you've stumbled into, human," she said quietly. "This planet is not just a dot in the stars. This world has power beyond your wildest comprehension." And she paused, her voice taking on an air of certainty, am its ruler. Jace's mind was reeling. This wasn't just an alien princess. This was someone who commanded an entire empire. Someone whose power made even his greatest military victories look like child's play. The Solarian Empire. He'd heard rumors of coarse whispers about their destructive potential, their ruthless conquest of world after world. But to be standing here so utterly powerless before her, it made everything he had known feel insignificant. "You're still trying to figure me out, aren't you?" she said, tilting her head, a glimmer of amusement in her voice. "You can't understand why I haven't killed you, why I haven't simply wiped you from existence. The truth is, I'm not interested in your death." Jace's thoughts raced. She wasn't interested in killing him, then what did she want? What could she possibly see in a human soldier like him? Princess Erin seemed to sense his inner turmoil. "No, I don't want to kill you, human," she continued, her voice softening. "You're far more useful to me alive." Her words hung in the air, sending a shiver through Jace. He had no idea what she meant, but the look in her eyes made him certain that whatever it wasn't going to be easy. "You'll help me understand your species, help me unlock the potential I know you have. And in return, I'll spare your life," she said. "But make no mistake, human, this is no simple exchange. You are now bound to my will." With a flick of her wrist, Jace felt the grip on his body loosen, just enough for him to regain control over his muscles. His legs were still stiff, but he could move his fingers now, clenching and unclenching them as though testing his own body to see if it would respond. But he wasn't free. He was still trapped in her power, caught in a web of something much greater than himself. Princess Erin stepped back, her eyes never leaving him. "You're free to move now," she said, her tone light, almost dismissive. "But you will not escape. You will not flee. I will know if you try." Jace's heart pounded in his chest, his thoughts spiraling. He knew this wasn't just some alien princess with a strange sense of humor. She was someone with power that far exceeded anything he'd ever seen. Someone who had lived for centuries and controlled entire worlds with ease. And now, he was her pawn. "You may have heard of the Solarian Empire's reach," she continued, her voice taking on a cold, calculating tone. "But what you don't know is that we don't just conquer, we adapt. And you, human, will be part of my empire, whether you like it or not. The question is, will you help me? Or will you fight to your death?" Jace stood, frozen once again, not by her power, but by the sheer weight of her words. She was right. This wasn't a fight he could win. Not yet. He had no choice but to play along, at least for now. But he wasn't going to give up. He wasn't going to just roll over and accept his fate. He might be trapped, but he was still human. And he would find a way out of this. Princess Erin smiled, as if sensing the defiance building inside him. "I'll be watching, human. Don't disappoint me." As she turned and walked away, Jace's mind spun with plans, with schemes. He was a prisoner on a hostile planet, surrounded by enemies he couldn't even begin to understand. But one thing was clear: he wouldn't go down without a fight. Jace stood there, his limbs finally regaining some sense of movement. Though the lingering cold from Princess Erin's power still clung to his bones like a persistent shadow. He could feel his pulse pounding in his chest, the weight of her presence pressing down on him with an intensity he had never experienced. His mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. He had been brought to this alien world, trapped in the grip of a princess with unimaginable power. And now she was giving him a choice. The bargain, however, felt anything but simple. Princess Erin had made her offer clear: she would spare his life, but in return, he had to serve her under her terms. The weight of that offer gnawed at him, pulling at the edges of his consciousness. How could he trust her? What did she want with a human soldier? And what would it cost him to accept? As his body finally regained full mobility, Jace took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. His instincts screamed at him to resist, to fight back against this alien princess who had so easily manipulated him. But something in her words had planted a seed of doubt. She wasn't just toying with him. She was offering him something he couldn't ignore. The question was, did he have any choice but to accept? "Tell me more," Jace finally said, his voice strained but steady. "What exactly are you asking of me?" Princess Erin turned, her violet eyes locking onto his with that unblinking, unreadable gaze. "You misunderstand, human," she replied softly, her tone carrying both a threat and an invitation. "I'm not asking, I'm offering." Jace frowned, his mind spinning. What did she mean by that? Was she saying he had a choice? Or was this all just another illusion, another game she played, toying with him? "I don't need your submission to rule, Jace Walker," she continued, her voice lilting with an unsettling calm. "But you are interesting. Your species is interesting. You have potential, something I've seen in few others." Jace didn't understand what she meant by that. Humans had strength, yes, but he had no illusions about the raw power this princess wielded. If she wanted him dead, he would already be a lifeless corpse. The fact that she hadn't killed him yet was both terrifying and intriguing. "What do you need me for then?" he asked, his frustration and confusion bubbling up. "I'm just a soldier. I'm not special. I'm not anything extraordinary. You're human," she interrupted, her voice a whisper that seemed to echo in the vast emptiness around them. "And that alone is enough." Jace swallowed hard, trying to keep his emotions in check. He had spent his life fighting for survival, making tough calls, and facing enemies far stronger than himself. But this was different. This wasn't a battle he could win by force alone. And the princess knew it. There's more at stake. "Then you realize," Princess Erin continued, her eyes narrowing slightly as she assessed him. "The Solarian Empire is at a crossroads. We have conquered planets, but we are stagnating. I need someone to help me unlock the next phase of our evolution. And you, human, have a role to play in that." Jace's mind reeled. "You want me to help you conquer more worlds?" Princess Erin's lips curled into a faint smile. "Not just conquer. I want to evolve. I want to unlock the potential of your species, your strength, your creativity, your unpredictability. Humans have the power to shape the galaxy, and I need your help to harness that." He shook his head in disbelief. "You think I can help you do that? How?" "By showing you what you don't yet understand about yourself. Your capacity for destruction and creation. Your ability to overcome insurmountable odds. The galaxy doesn't just need more weapons. It needs new ways of thinking, new ways of seeing the universe." Jace was silent, trying to process her words. He had seen destruction. He had seen how war, even in the name of survival, could change entire civilizations. But what she was talking about, Slavolution, new ways of thinking, sounded almost philosophical. Could he really play a part in that? And if he did, what would be the cost? "And if I refuse?" Jace asked, his voice low. Princess Erin's eyes flickered, and for the first time, a shadow of something darker passed over her expression. "Refusal is not an option, human. Not if you value your life." Jace stiffened. He had been in situations where resistance was a death sentence, but this felt different. The choice was no longer just about survival. He had to decide what kind of person he wanted to be, what kind of man he was willing to become. Would he resist her, fight her for the sake of his humanity? Or would he accept her offer and align himself with someone whose power he could never hope to match? "You'll stay with me, human," she said, her voice cool and firm, cutting through his thoughts. "You'll help me reshape the galaxy in ways you cannot yet comprehend. And in return, you'll live. I'll give you the chance to prove yourself." The weight of her words pressed down on him. This wasn't just a simple bargain. It was a trap, a web she had spun around him from the moment he had landed. Yet there was no escape. He had no allies, no means of escaping this alien world. Even if he fought, what could he possibly do? He was nothing against her power. Jace took a deep breath, his mind made up. If he was going to survive this, he would have to play her game. "For now, fine," he said, his voice steady. "I'll help you, but don't think for a second I trust you." Princess Erin's smile deepened, but there was something almost approving in her gaze. "I didn't expect you to. Trust is earned, not given." Her gaze softened just enough for Jace to see a flicker of something else as strange. Unspoken understanding passing between them. She wasn't just using him for her empire's purposes. No, there was something more here, and Jace couldn't help but wonder if, somewhere deep inside, Princess Erin might need him as much as he needed her. "You'll learn quickly, Jace Walker," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You'll learn more than you ever thought possible, and when you do, we will change the galaxy together." Jace stood there, still frozen in place, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. He had agreed, but what had he truly committed to? And what was she really asking of him? The game had begun. And there was no turning back now. Jace stood in the heart of the alien city, surrounded by towering structures that defied every law of architecture he had ever known. The city pulsed with life and eerie, otherworldly energy that seemed to hum beneath the surface. The air was thick with the smell of exotic flora and the sharp tanks of advanced technology. He couldn't deny it, he was utterly out of place. Every corner he turned felt like another trap. Another reminder that he was a prisoner in a galaxy far beyond. His understanding, but what troubled him more than the alien world around him, was the promise he had made to Princess Erin. The bargain he had agreed to help her. At least, that's what he had told himself. But deep down, the weight of the decision pressed on him like a heavy stone lodged in his chest. Was it cowardice that had driven him to accept? Survival? Or something deeper? Or had he truly been so desperate to stay alive that he had sold his soul to an alien princess? Jace clenched his fists, the tension building in his mind. He had promised to help her reshape the galaxy, but what did that even mean? How far would she push him? And at what cost? You're thinking too much again, human. Jace's breath caught in his throat. He turned to find Princess Erin standing a few feet away, her violet eyes locked onto his with that same unsettling calm. She had an uncanny way of appearing whenever she wanted, as if the air itself parted for her. He knew she could sense his turmoil, his doubt. She was too perceptive, too powerful for him to hide his feelings from her. "I can't help but wonder what you see in me," Jace said, trying to sound casual, but the words came out sharper than he intended. "What is it you really want from me, princess? You claim to want my help, but all I've done is survive. That's it." Princess Erin smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. 'Twas one of those rare smiles that hinted at something far darker. Survival. "It's the most primal instinct, isn't it?" she said, her voice soft, almost contemplative. "But survival isn't enough. Not for me. Not for my empire." Jace's eyes narrowed. "Then why not just take what you need? Could wipe out entire armies with a flick of your wrist." Smile widened slightly, as though she appreciated his defiance. "Because I want more than just destruction, Jace Walker. I want something deeper. Something lasting." She stepped closer, her movements fluid, almost predatory. Humans, unlike the other species I've encountered, have this extraordinary ability. You can adapt, evolve in ways no one else can. That's why I need you. You've been shaped by your experiences, war, loss, survival. That has made you strong in ways you can't even comprehend. Jace's mind reeled, but he held his ground. "So what? You think I'm just a tool? A weapon for your grand plan?" Princess Erin's gaze softened, just a fraction. "Not a tool, a partner. I see in you something I can't find in anyone else's raw potential. But that potential can't be unlocked by force alone. I need you to see what I see, to understand the future I'm trying to build." Jace let out a sharp breath. "And if I don't, what happens then?" Erin didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached out and gently lifted his chin with one finger, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You have a choice, human. You always do. You could resist. You could fight me. But I assure you, you would lose. I am far beyond anything you've ever faced. Your entire existence would be erased, and the galaxy would continue without you." Jace shuddered, but he didn't look away. "And if I help you, what happens then?" The princess's eyes glinted with something unreadable. "Then you will see things that no human has ever seen. You will witness the true power of the Solarian Empire and be a part of something that will change the very fabric of the universe." Jace took a deep breath, fighting the sense of helplessness that threatened to overwhelm him. He wasn't like this. He wasn't one to simply give in to become someone else's pawn. But the stakes had shifted. His survival, his very life, depended on understanding this new reality. If he resisted now, he would be crushed. But if he accepted, what would he become? Why me? He asked again, his voice quieter now, almost to himself. Why not someone else? There must be others with more to offer. Erin's gaze softened just a fraction, and for a moment there was a glimpse of something vulnerable in her eyes. Because, Jace, you are the one who can make the difference. You're the one who can evolve, not just for survival, but for something more. You're the key. The weight of her words hung in the air between them, and for the first time since their encounter, Jace began to feel the full weight of the decision before him. He could still refuse, but the consequences were too great. He would die. He knew it. He would be erased like so many others before him. You've made your choice, haven't you? Princess Erin said softly, almost as though she could hear his thoughts. You will help me. You will become part of my vision. You will have a place in the new world we create. Jace clenched his fists, his heart pounding in his chest. He didn't want this. He didn't want to play her game. But the alternative was worse, much worse. I'll do it, Jace said, his voice steady but filled with a sense of reluctant resolve. But don't think for a second that I trust you. Erin's smile returned, sharper than before, as though she had been expecting this answer all along. Trust is earned, human, and it will come in time. Jace nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead, calculating, analyzing. This wasn't over. The battle wasn't won by simply agreeing. It had only just begun. Jace's nights were filled with the same restless thoughts, and his days were no better. Despite his agreement with Princess Erin, the weight of the decision still gnawed at him. He had given in to survival, had made a pact with the devil. In a way, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled deeper into something he couldn't control. Princess Erin had begun to teach him, showing him the vast extent of the Solarian Empire's reach. It wasn't just the military might or the ships that held her power. It was her ability to bend the galaxy to her will, to make species and entire systems bow before her. She had manipulated entire planets, and Jace saw it now in the cold, efficient way she operated. Yet even as she brought him into her plans, a small part of him resisted. The line between ally and enemy blurred in his mind. Erin, for all her coldness, was not just a ruler, she was a force. And it terrified him to realize that he might be falling into her orbit. But then came the news that shook everything, the one thing he hadn't anticipated. The warning came late one night, when he was alone in his quarters, trying to piece together the fractured thoughts in his head. The door to his room slid open with a hiss, and a dark figure stepped inside. Jace immediately recognized it as one of Erin's trusted officers, a tall alien with chitinous armor and eyes that glowed a deep orange. Captain Walker, the officer said, his voice rough yet urgent. We have a problem. Yes. Jace rose from his chair, sensing the gravity in the officer's tone. What kind of problem? A threat. The officer continued, his expression tense. A force is moving through the outer systems. We've intercepted their transmissions. They're not like anything we've faced before. Jace's heart skipped a beat. Not like anything we've faced, he asked, stepping closer. Explain. Officer glanced behind him, ensuring no one else was listening. It's a Fleeton alliance of several races. They've been watching us for some time, waiting for an opportunity to strike. Their ships are unlike anything we've ever seen. And their tactics are ... unorthodox. They're calling themselves the Vanguard. The Vanguard, Jace repeated, confusion setting in. Never heard of them. They're a shadow faction, the officer explained. A mix of species that refuse to bow to the Solarian Empire. and they've been building an army. Ah! Chill ran down Jace's spine, and they're targeting us. The officer nodded grimly. Yes, we've just intercepted a message. They're coming for the heart of the Empire Princess Erin's stronghold. Jace's stomach churned. And? You want me to help stop them? The officer gave him a look of grim understanding. No, Captain Walker, you're already involved. We all are. The princess knows this is no simple raid. If we don't strike back, we risk everything. The vanguard will not stop until they've destroyed all we've built. Jace didn't have to think twice. Princess Erin had been right. He had no choice but to help her. But now, the stakes were higher than ever. What he thought was a battle for survival was quickly escalating into something much more dangerous. A war, perhaps, but not just for the Solarian Empire. It was for the galaxy itself. Within hours, Jace was standing beside Princess Erin on the command deck of her flagship. The vast expanse of space stretched before them, filled with the swirling stars of distant systems. She stood at the center of the room, surrounded by her council and military leaders, but her attention was solely on the holographic map before her. It showed the fleet movements of the vanguard, a massive armada, and it was closing in on them faster than they could mobilize. This is not a simple skirmish, Erin said, her voice cold and sharp as always, but with a sharp edge of urgency. The vanguard believes we are weak. They believe that we've overstretched ourselves and that our empire is crumbling from within. Jace stepped forward, the weight of her words sinking in. Then we have to show them they're wrong. Erin turned to him, her eyes assessing him in that calculating way she had, but for once there was no amusement in her gaze. Only the cold, hard resolve of a ruler who knew the stakes. Yes, she said simply. We do, but I will not do this alone. She extended her hand, and despite his reservations, Jace found himself reaching out to take it. There was no turning back now. The deal had been made, and this was part of the bargain. You've seen the strength of the Solarian Empire, Erin said, her voice low and filled with the weight of history. You will see it again, but this time you will fight with me. Jace met her gaze, feeling a surge of determination. This wasn't about just following her orders. It was about proving to himself, and perhaps to her, that he wasn't just another pawn in her game. He was a soldier. He had fought in battles before, and he would fight again. This time, however, he would fight on the front lines of an intergalactic war, against an enemy that threatened everything he had come to understand about his place in the galaxy. The princess's gaze softened slightly, though her expression remained controlled. Together we will crush the vanguard, she said, her tone resolute. The galaxy will tremble before us. Jace nodded, stepping back. He wasn't sure what this war would bring or what it would cost him. But one thing was certain. The game had changed. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about power. And Jace was about to learn just how much he was willing to sacrifice to achieve it. As the command deck hummed with activity and the battle plans were laid out, Jace realized the true scope of the war that had begun. This was no longer just a war for the Solarian Empire. It was a war for the future of the galaxy itself, and he was caught in the middle of it. But there was one thing Jace knew for certain. He would not back down. The battle raged around them, a storm of fire and destruction lighting up the void of space. Jace stood on the command deck, his eyes locked on the holographic map that displayed the chaos unfolding before him. The Vanguard's fleet had engaged the Solarian Armada, and the two forces collided with an intensity that shook the very foundation of the galaxy. He could hear the distant rumble of explosions, feel the tremors beneath his feet, as if the very ship he stood on was being torn apart. But in the midst of it all, Jace remained focused. His hands gripped the railing, and his mind was clear. the noise of the battle fading into the background. This was the moment he had prepared for. Even if he hadn't known it would come this way. Princess Erin stood beside him, her face an unyielding mask of focus, eyes scanning the battlefield as her empire fought to survive. She didn't look at him, but Jace could feel her presence next to him, the weight of her power, her resolve, pressing down like a heavy mantle. "This is it." Erin's voice cut through the cacophony of the battle, her tone steady, unshaken. "The Vanguard will not stop. They believe they can destroy us, but we will show them what happens when they challenge the Solarian Empire." Jace nodded, his chest tight with anticipation. He had never seen such a battle, such raw, unrestrained power. Ships that tore through space, weapons that could obliterate entire fleets in an instant, and strategies that left no room for mercy. The Solarian Empire had one thing in its favor. They knew how to fight with precision, with ruthless efficiency. But this wasn't just a fight for the Solarian Empire. It was for survival, for a future Jace had never imagined before he crash-landed. On this strange, hostile world, the princess turned to face him now, her violet eyes burning with an intensity he couldn't ignore. "You have done well, human," she said, her voice low but filled with something appreciation, perhaps. "Your resolve has been tested, and you have not faltered." Jace didn't answer immediately. He couldn't. His thoughts were still caught in the battle, in the devastation unfolding before them. But Erin's words were a reminder of the price he had paid. She had changed him, forced him to see a new path forward, one that was fraught with danger, but one that was, perhaps, worth following. "I didn't do this for you," Princess Jace finally said, his voice tight but firm. "I'm still not sure where I stand in all this, but I'm not going to let the Vanguard win. Not now, not after everything that's happened." A small smile tugged at the corner of Erin's lips. For a brief moment, the icy barrier she kept around herself faltered. "That, human, is the kind of resolve I need." Jace felt a strange mixture of pride and unease. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about something much larger. The fate of entire systems, of billions of lives, hung in the balance. And the war was far from over. The battle intensified, but Jace was no longer watching from the sidelines. The call came through the comms: his squadron was ready. It was time to join the fray. He made his way to the hangar bay, his thoughts racing as he stepped into the cockpit of his fighter, the weight of the helmet settling over his head. He couldn't help but feel the gravity of what they were facing. "Princess," Erin's voice came through the comms as he initiated the takeoff sequence. "Stay focused, Jace. We're in this together." He didn't answer, but as his fighter rocketed into the chaos of the battle, he understood. The air was thick with energy, with the roar of weapons and the flash of lights that disintegrated entire ships in the blink of an eye. It was a dance of death, a fight for supremacy in the stars. Jace's squadron moved with precision, flanking the Vanguard's ships, creating a pattern of destruction that would cripple their fleet. As he flew through the haze of battle, his thoughts turned to Erin. She was more than just the princess of an empire. She was the embodiment of everything Jace had learned in the last few weeks: survival, sacrifice, and a new kind of power. And yet, as much as he had changed, as much as he had come to understand her vision, there was still something about her that unsettled him. She was not like the leaders he had fought for. There was no warmth, no compassion in her. But there was something else, something Jace couldn't quite put his finger on. As the Vanguard fleet began to falter, Jace saw it there. Command ship, the flagship of the Vanguard, was retreating. They were losing. The tide was turning in their favor. But it wasn't just the weapons that had won this battle. It was the unity that had come out of the necessity of survival. The Solarian Empire, under Princess Erin's leadership, had stood strong against a force that sought to tear them apart. And now, With the vanguard retreating, Jace realized that something had changed within him too. He was no longer just a survivor. He was a part of this empire now. Back on the command deck, Princess Erin stood tall. Her eyes locked onto the battlefield as the last of the vanguard ships retreated into the blackness of space. The victory was theirs, but the price had been steep. Entire fleets had been decimated, and countless lives were lost in the chaos. Yet, in the midst of the carnage, a new future had begun to take shape. Jace approached her, his face hard, but his eyes focused. "We did it," he said simply, his voice carrying the weight of the battle. Erin turned to him, her gaze unreadable. "Yes," she said quietly, her voice softer than usual. "We did." For a long moment, they simply stood there, watching as the last remnants of the vanguard fleet disappeared into the distance. There was no celebration, no cheers, just a quiet understanding that this war was far from over. Jace wasn't sure what had changed, but he knew one thing. He wasn't the same man who had crashed onto this planet weeks ago. The galaxy was no longer a distant concept. Teat was his reality now. And with Princess Erin, for better or worse, they would shape the future together. The battle was over, but the true war had just begun.